And hello everyone. Ted Simpson here, ready to do another fine painting with y'all. We are doing something extra special. It's my first painting of the year, and we're going to get going here in just a second. Um, there were a lot of stuff going on around the old Simpson household at the time that I started filming, so we're going with the old quiet video today, or the voiceover video. So look at this. We've got our 12 by 16 canvas set in the portrait orientation, covered the canvas with that thin, even coat of the liquid white, and literally just throwing a little bit of blue color up there. A little bit of phthalo blue, just crisscross strokes, throw it on wherever you want in the approximate amount of sky that you want in your scene. And then using just a very small amount of that same phthalo blue, put a little bit down in the water. Once you clean your brush out, even just scrubbing it out in a paper towel, all I'm doing is going over everything. Look how I just push and blend and slide that color around, that liquid white, doing the job of blending and softening the sky for us. Anytime you like, you can stop, you can wipe out the excess paint out of the brush if you get too much in there. But look at this, the more you work it, the more the paint moves and slides and lightens up. And what we should get here is a little indication of just an interesting sky. The distant clouds, those light areas and the dark areas working together. And a couple of final strokes just to smooth everything out. Any of those lingering brush marks, you just give them just a set horizontal brush stroke, and it cleans it right up. So adding just a little bit more blue to the water, working from the bottom up. Hopefully it's a little darker at the bottom, a little lighter at the horizon. And hopefully, am I satisfied with this yet? It's been a few days since I painted this, so it's like I'm watching a new painting myself here. I don't remember. I know I have a picture of the finished product, but just trying to figure out what I did. Forgive me, I think I have a little cold here. Sorry if I sniffle. Okay, so it looks like we're just going to forego any more clouds, any more distinct clouds, and we're just going to drop in some interesting foothills. A little bit of that same phthalo blue. I added just a wee hint of black. You could add a little hint of Prussian blue, mountain mixture, whatever you like here, just a slightly darker color. And I just pull down in these vertical strokes, clean the brush, and now I'm tapping out the bottom. Got to create that mist, that nice separator between the light and the dark. I believe we're going to be doing another layer here. So the object here is we have some dark paint and then a little light paint. The next step is dark paint. So we start to get that feeling of layers in our painting. Bob would call them planes. And gonna do some things in this painting here haven't seen in a little while. For example, right here, using a little bit of phthalo green and my blue to make a little more distinct, brighter, bolder. foothill in front of the previous. And you can see when you start to run out of paint, how light that paint can get. And the lighter it is, the further away it's going to look. So maybe we'll have a little indication of distance in this foothill. Shaking out that brush. I think we're going to get crazy on it here. Tap that out. Look how that liquid white just starts fading out the bottom there. Just so we could see a little bit, like we see a little bit of that mist in the blue foothills. Lightly lift up just to keep everything a nice vertical fashion here and blend out the bottom as soft and misty as you want it. Any lingering brush marks, you can just crisscross them away. Okay, here we go. I've picked up some darker color that I created. This is created using a little bit of the phthalo green, a very small touch of blue, and a bit of the Van Dyke brown to darken and dull it. We're putting in a whole set of background bushes and trees in our foreground. You see how quickly we can do this? You don't have to think about it too much. You just tap and make a basic shape, and the brush does most of the work. While I'm tapping it, you can see it picks up a little bit of that liquid white, and as I run out of my color, it automatically gets lighter. As soon as you add a little more paint to your brush, you get another darker sense. That's why we could create multiple layers as we go here. Throwing a little bit of this color into the water. Notice how I covered up that little white separator between sky and water. Kind of helps me keep my perspective of where the horizon is. And look at that. Now we've got the bushes and trees and the reflections. So with a clean brush, I'm just pushing in firmly and lightly, firm to move the color, lighter to soften it. And if you use a little bit different indication of where the reflection starts, you get a whole cove look to our scene here, a little less flat looking. So clean brush, brush sideways, blur that reflection even more, and boom, we've got something going here. I do believe here we're going to be getting ready for the highlights. Maybe I'll put some trees in here, or some trunks, I should say. Let us see what we do. All right, well, you can easily see here I'm pulling some paint through my brush, getting some plenty of that. Right up on the tips of the bristles, turn that brush around and gently give it a tap. Look at that. Just tap, tap, tap the paint on. Tap a basic little highlight shape. Leave it alone. Reload the brush, drop down, and tap a little more. Try to just keep this moving. Probably one of the more important points here. Keep going forward in your scene. Keep adding more. Don't feel the need to just keep going over the same spots over and over. It's going to look just fine. Trust yourself. Trust the process. Something doesn't look exactly the way you wanted it to, it's okay. It looks like I used a little bit of Indian yellow, just Indian yellow by itself, with a touch of the liquid white to thin it down. Remember, a thin paint sticks to a thick paint. I added just a hint of red to it, and look at that. We get a nice orangey color. Adds a new flavor to the scene and creates a sense of depth and distance here, layers in our painting. Now, I'm using the push up method on this tree. That's where we pull the brush down vertically in the paint, turn that handle over so we get that nice rounded corner facing up, and we're pushing gently up to deposit the paint. Notice how I keep working my way down, get all those nice little sparkly things happening, and you move on. Here's some more. When you're doing this, there's a lot of factors that can change the effect. Okay, some of them we can adjust and work with. Some of them we just sort of let happen. How much paint is on the shadows there? How thick your dark color is? How much paint you put out there? That can affect how the paint sticks when we do the highlights. Of course, how much you load on the brush, how hard you push. All this can change things. Now, this is a pretty wild looking scene here. I added a touch of green to darken some of those bushes down on the right. Now look at this. I turn my brush to the side and I'm just gently pushing up. Instead of holding the brush vertical and pushing up, I hold it sideways and push up. And maybe a little bit of highlights are going to be reflected in the water too. Just some basic shapes now to make it look kind of mirrored. I'm tapping down. That's the opposite of pushing up for putting the highlights on the tree. Push up. When I do the reflection, you tap down. And of course, brush sideways to blur. Look at all that reflected highlight color in our water scene. All right, coming in here with a little bit of Van Dyke Brown on the knife and just slathering sideways there, a little indication of land. A little bit pulling towards the center. I find pulling towards the center helps me get a sense of where this land is flowing, so to speak. Bob's lay of the land. And as you can see, as I move over to the side, I extend the length of the pull. And look at that. It just, there's a little tiny bit off in the distance. That's all we would see. But as we move our way down the scene, I make more land. And it automatically looks like it's a little bit closer. Now a little touch and a little bit more. If it looks a little too light for your taste, add a touch more. And now what I did is I mixed up a very marbly mixture of just a little bit of that Van Dyke brown, a touch of white in it. Very small amount. I'm just letting it kind of dance across there, ever so gentle. Very, very light. The more you try to work it, it all just kind of melts together. We want to try to avoid just making a big old pile of mud on the canvas. Now, pushing up a little bit of my highlight color on the fan brush. Look at that. It pushes up, makes some little sticks and twiggies right on down, just hopefully slightly covering the top edge of the brown. See how you pull a little bit of color right on over the edge? Really makes this look like the land is underneath the foliage. What do we have next? Looks like I'm using my black-handled oval brush and pushing up. Look at those bristles bend, and it creates all those nice little sticks and twigs. You could do this with the 1-inch brush. Many of the brushes, the 2-inch brush will happen in about 4 seconds. But all we're doing is just pushing up to get all those nice grassy weeds effect. As long as it's relatively dark, you're good. And notice how there's not big chunks and lumps of paint there. You don't need a lot of paint in your brush to cover the scene. Not having as much paint on the canvas there makes the highlight come off a little bit brighter. Oh, there we go. Got to get a little bit of, there we go, a little bit of reflection just using the corner of the brush. I think way over on the right side of that new peninsula, you could see how the grass just barely overlaps the land back there. Again, perspective, a sense of depth and distance. A little bit of highlight, maybe changing the color here on my 1-inch landscape brush. A little bit more of the greens and yellows. Ooh, look what happens when I bash it. Ugh. Puts out a nice flower of yellow there. When you're doing this, all those times I've been loading my brush, it puts some color deeper into the bristles. So yeah, after I'm tapping and getting all the paint off the tips of the bristles, there's still a bit of paint hidden in the inside. So when you bend firm, give it a nice sharp push, that inner paint comes out. Boom, boom. Give it a go. It looks like all these little flowers growing up. One more. Look at that. We still have plenty of shadow. Need that shadow so the highlights stand out. What do I got going on here next? Gotta have a little bit of land. Ooh, look at that, much darker. I'm not sure. It looks like I just used a little bit more of the Van Dyke Brown. May have added a touch of black to it, but I'm not sure. Now a little bit of liquid white on the knife. You can see I'm just cutting in a little indication of a water line underneath those areas of dirt. Look at that. Give a sense of movement to our water, a little lapping on the shoreline. See, it doesn't need it every single spot, just a couple of indications there is good enough. Now let's highlight this second batch of land. A little bolder, that's for sure. Too bold? Oh, that's up to you to decide. There we go. I like that highlight. And let's get in that water line. Trying to cut these horizontal lines here and there. Wow, Van Dyke Brown of the fan brush. I think I'm trying to decide where the heck do I want this tree to be. This is our bravery test, and touch and tap. Go for it. As long as it's just a little bit wider at the bottom than it is at the top, it creates that very natural look. And I get it. You're going to want to adjust it as you want to. But as long as we just have a basic shape, this is kind of a rough bark effect. Always a little bit there. Always a little bit of adjustment. I get it. Sometimes that top gets, it's a little too skinny. And I just extend it up a little bit. So many different techniques in this method. We could put bark on here a number of different ways. I like this version here where Bob just taps a little bit of light color right down one side. And I know my hand is in the way, but I'm tapping, I mean, just barely on the edge of the brown. Try not to tap too much on the brown itself. Just, you can see it just makes the whole tree a little bit wider because we're adding another section down one side. Now we could get, real deep into the weeds here, and we can tap the edge of the highlight into the dark part of the tree and blend it in a little bit. You can use the tips of the bristle, you drag it across to make it look like bark or pine trees, or I'm sorry, palm trees. Here I'm taking just a little bit of brighter white and just on a couple of spots, adding a little bit brighter just as an extra little zing. Now, thin down your Van Dyke Brown with your odorless paint thinner. And really just using the tip of the brush behind my hand there. Just letting that paint flow off the brush. That's a difficult thing to get a hang of. I'm still working on it myself, letting your arm kind of be free to move around and create some interesting effects there. Kind of give your wrist a wiggle or jiggle. And you could spend a lot of time on this. You can make as many or as few of these branches as you want. You can cover them up if you don't like them. You can leave them bare. But in this, I don't know, very spring, maybe early summery scene we have going here, just tapping some dark color. This is that same dark color I put on for the shadows of everything in the background there and all the other bushes in the foreground and peninsula and such. I decided just to slam a little bit of leaf effects on here. Now this oval brush does some really cool effects right off the basic tapping. A little bit of that thinned highlight color. I just made some with the yellow, the green, the touch of the liquid white. And notice how I'm starting at the top of each of these little clumps, putting some on, tapping and reloading the brush for each of my clumps, basically. Here we go. Hopefully not over highlighting things. Touch of brighter yellow. Look at that. Adds a little extra there to the top so that catching just a little bit more sunlight. Ooh, maybe throw a couple extra ones back there. Very cool. Finding some spots, pushing up to make some more detail in the foreground. They're looking a little too dark, and you got to also hide the foots of the tree. Boy, that tree is right down in the water, isn't it? Very, very close. That spring runoff. So with that being said, folks, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.